real is real in the sense of, right, just naming it and saying what it is and starting the conversation based on actual, right, literacy piece of it is so important. And I think with anything we do, we have to be very clear, right, in naming it, articulating it, so everyone is perfectly understanding of what it is that it's about. So real is real.
Thank you for tuning into The Real Storytellers. This space was created to allow you to meet some real ones, those engaging in racial and social justice work, and to allow you to cultivate your own journey. These members are real, their stories are real, and their work is anchored in everything the Real movement represents. Welcome to The Real Storytellers. I'm your host, Angel Booz. Today we have a special guest with us, the incoming Vice President of NJEA, Steve Beatty. Steve, welcome to the space.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Steve, please tell us who you are and or what you do.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Steve Beatty. By trade, I'm a high school social studies teacher. I taught for 25 years, most of it in the Bridgewater-Raritan School District in Somerset County, Central New Jersey. Yes, there is a Central New Jersey for all you out there. More recently, I've been serving in the office of Secretary Treasurer, one of the state officers for NJEA. And as Angel said, I'll be the incoming Vice President this September.
Thank you for sharing that. And we are looking forward to having you, Sean, and Petal in the leadership roles there. We know that you guys are going to continue to support this work. And we're really excited about that.
Me as well.
Now, Steve, can you share a story about a time when you knew you wanted to be a professional educator?
Yeah, I mean, I have a story like anybody else, right? You hear so many of these when that moment of an epiphany of, I wanted to be that person. And I had my third grade teacher, Miss Zane, and, she did a fantastic job. And I just thought, at a certain point, I joke, oh, she had all the chalk she could ever want and the bathroom pass and all that power and control. But truly, and I saw just for whatever reason that it clicked, right? That what she was doing is what I wanted to do. And as I went on in, my academic career, through middle school and into high school, just always in my mind, like, I'm going to do that. And I'd watch my teachers and talk to them and see what they did and kind of always taking a little bit of it in. And when I went to Rutgers in the late 80s, and just was the foregone conclusion, I just walked over to the Graduate School of Education one day to get the paperwork and see how it went about doing it. And here I am.
That's amazing. We know that educators are critical in terms of helping students to find what their career path is going to be. And so we all need to be very mindful of the role that we play in students' lives, because we never know just how much we're influencing them. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's important to know because, right, we want to make sure we have a workforce and, who inspires you, right? What do you see in someone that is going to be the next generation to find that are going to be our colleagues and our replacements?
Absolutely. Now, Steve, in your work as an educator, can you share a story about the moment you became aware that racial equity is critical to our work?
Yeah, and in answer to this question, again, I would be lying if I said, it was early on or 5 days or 5 years or even 15 years in, because, I'll back up a little bit. I was raised in a very liberal household. I emulated my parents taught us the difference between right and wrong and inclusion in a very progressive town of Maplewood, Essex County, which I'm still proud to be, from and visit as regularly as I can and what I learned there. But nonetheless, even though, my father was someone that marched in conjunction with the civil rights movement in the 60s against the segregated lunch counters, and I thought I was doing things in my classroom, being equitable and always fair, but it really is until recently, I have to admit, until you really understand the work, right, and starting a true journey on understanding the beginning of what it means to walk that path with my colleagues, you included leading the way and showing us how, as white co-conspirators, what our role is in that piece. So it really, to be honest, not until very recently, the last couple of years, I've truly start to understand what that's about.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your candor. I think when we all watched last year on television that 8 minutes and 46 seconds of George Floyd losing his life before our eyes, it really became personal for a lot of people, because for the first time, they really got to see it happening in real time, to see the emotions behind everything that was happening right before them. And it really, I believe that moment impacted many people in a way that they hadn't been impacted before. And I believe since then, our work as a union has really taken a major turn, and having the real come in at the perfect moment as well to kind of segue us into doing this critical work and having these critical conversations in terms of how we can move race relations forward in our state. Now, Steve, can you describe your relationship with the real?
Well, I'm proud to be part of it. Again, in the position I'm in, it's great that we obviously know the initiatives, the things that our staff and our members, of course, second to none in terms of driving the work. So when we heard about what Gabe and all of you were doing in terms of the real movement, to be a part of it from really the early stages, right? To be involved in some very in-depth and real conversations as far as with the work, and the timing was right. I describe my relationship as being a humbling one, right? To be part of the group, to be part of some of the inner core and the discussions that move it forward is a great piece, again, not only for my personal growth, but also to offer what I have in my position to help that movement and our organization grow with it as well.
Absolutely. And I think we all have to realize that in order to be impactful in our roles, we do have to do that individual work. And even myself, being a part of the real, I've had to do individual work. And some people believe that when it comes to racial and social justice, that Black and brown people have it all figured out, and we don't. We're doing the work as well. So we're growing and learning together. Now, have you, Steve, had one or more experiences with the real that has challenged you or helped you to grow in some way?
No, I've had more than one or two. I mean, really, that's the whole point, right? And I know some of the lessons we've learned as I've been fortunate enough to also go through the Undoing Racism is that, you get to your growing edge, and it's always that edge, right? You have to keep pushing it more. So I think every time that I'm in some spaces with the real movement and the group or whatever iteration it may be in, that there are powerful, difficult, but necessary conversations around whatever the topic may be. And there's some great topics, as you know, the sort of subjects which we delve into after some great music to set the tone and some check-in, to talk about various elements. So I would think almost pretty much every single time that I'm in the space with my friends and colleagues, brothers and sisters with the real movement, there are those conversations going on. And the feeling that it evokes for me of difficult, necessary, and progress.
Absolutely. And in those spaces, I think the way that Gabe and the team have structured just the way that the real movement conversations happen has been critical. I think that it provides a safe space. It provides an opportunity for people to express themselves and to really be truthful about their experiences.
Yeah.
And all of us are challenged sometimes there with things that we just don't know, have never been exposed to, and things that we just, don't really understand. And it allows us to all explore those things and, like I said, to grow together. That's the common thread of what the real movement is, just growing together so that we're all prepared to do this work. Now, Steve, in thinking of the future, what does it look like, and how does the real movement influence that future?
I mean, you would argue that the real movement is an integral part of that future. We have, various initiatives that we work on, right? Whether it's the Member of Color, the real movement, our labor management collaborative, the 200,000 conversations, which I'm also involved in as well. It's all part of the new fabric, the weave of what our organization can be, right? If we're really to live up to our own true vision and the vision of what we as educators, have bound ourselves to as the mission that we have encumbered ourselves with, but to good ends, right? We must understand that the real movement is a big piece of that. How far can we go if we are shackling ourselves with, the bondage of old and not coming to terms with what history is and how we move forward? So in the real movement, understanding racial equity, affirmation, literacy, developing a common vocabulary, right, to actually use to express fully and articulate what it is that we're trying to get at, right, without lifting up the voices of those that need to be, in addition, right, not only Black and brown voices, but white voices to combine, right, that it will take all of us. So I think that's what the real movement is really doing, and bringing those voices together, trying to understand others' perspectives, and then in unity, there is that strength and solidarity of union, right? That brings us to, as you said, the future we need to get to.
Absolutely. And I know as a uh, consultant and someone involved in the real movement, we are working on trying to come up with that common language. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because we all need to understand how critical language is and how important words are. And
Mhm.
our choice of words is everything in how we deal with our students and how we deal with our colleagues. And truly understanding the power of words allows us to behave and show up a different way. And so we do have to be very mindful of that. So thank you for
Yes.
pointing that out. Now, Steve, if you had to create a hashtag for your work, what would that hashtag be?
I thought about this when I saw the question. There's, I'll give you, I guess I'll give you two, because there's one, as in everyone's life, you have journeys, you have ups and downs, dark times you want to get through. And I've always thought that, as I keep thinking, if I ever got a tattoo, what would the first one say and what would it be? And I have a couple ideas, and Tamara and I are toying with it, so maybe we'll see. But nonetheless, the first one I always thought was ever forward. And now it just was sort of a life lesson in general. No matter what, ever forward. What does that mean? You're just always going to keep going and pushing that. So I think that has generalized so many ways you can apply that, right, in terms of what that means. But in this time, again, for the organization, that we're always going to have that mind to move forward. So ever forward, and maybe the other one would be always learning, because that's the goal of everyone. We're all lifelong learners. We all have to be educated, even if we think ourselves the most brilliant educator. No, right? We're always learning, right, from experiences, from each other. So I would look at those two: ever forward and hashtag always learning.
Now, in 1 minute or less, Steve, can you tell me why the real movement is vital right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's vital right now. As you mentioned earlier, its inception was around the murder of George Floyd last year. And I mean, you could look at any age. It's vital in any age, right? You could pick any date and say it's a vital day to start something that moves us along that road. But especially now, because I think we are ready, right? Sometimes you unfortunately have to wait for tragedies, or again, one more day of oppression that for some reason finally clicks and opens the lock that people are in the right frame of mind. I hate to say that again, because we talk about as speed as being part of that language, and who has control of that. And being a student of history, and seeing what, teaching students about the civil rights movement as its own piece, and then saying, well, how is that continued, right? What are the common threads? I think the real movement is vital right now, because it finally can draw that line through all of those things that have happened as a timeline to today. Or we as an organization, and as educators, it's incumbent upon us, right, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, that we had a vital role in formative, with our kids' formative lives, right? And they say, what happens now in school has to translate to going home. What happens at the classroom has to go to the dinner table, right? Not the other way around any longer, as one of my colleagues points out. So we have to understand that the real movement is, the time is now to tell people that there is no other way, right? We can't accept blocking. We can't accept the fact that we're going to sit back and allow injustices to continue, or people to say certain things, whether it's microaggressions, macroaggressions, or flat out, racist structures that are continuing, right? The real movement has to be, in the moment we're in, to move that forward, because I think we are ready. The time is now.
Absolutely. And I love how you said there's no better time. And you also referred to age early on in your reply. And um, it's so crazy how a lot of people believe that their children are not at a relevant age or appropriate age to be able to learn
Yeah.
about racial and social justice, but there is no true age. And it shows true in the doll test that goes back
Mm.
decades at this point, where young children already have embedded in them that certain races, just by the skin color, represent good and represent bad. And so as educators and as parents, we have to understand that they can begin learning about equity and racial equity very early on, because whether we believe it or not, they're experiencing it. And
Of
they're
course.
interpreting things that they see in the cartoons and in their
Hmm.
day-to-day movements in the classroom. And so, yeah, we just have to make sure there's no right time. We just have to do it.
Wait, to your point, I realize how baked in racist education is, right, from day one of a child's life, because it's not learned, right? It's an artificial construct, as we know. So similarly, right, at the same day you're learning racism, you should be learning, right, the pieces of equity and what the real movement stands for. That's, you can't argue otherwise.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, Steve, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the audience?
Final thoughts. Thank you for listening. If you've stayed through this entire piece and listened to, my ramblings, but truthfully, I'm humbled to be here. I'm proud to be part of it, to be part of an organization that stands for this. I'm again equally proud that and happy that I have something to lend. Right, that whether my person, who I am personally, but also my office, that I'm able to put those things together and assist in any way that's helpful towards getting to a more perfect union, but more importantly, a more perfect society.
I love that. That was a great segue to closing us out. And Steve, thank you for blessing us with your presence, your knowledge, your experience. We appreciate you and the work that you do, as well as your team. You, Marie, and Sean have been integral in making this work happen and making just this space possible for all of our members. And so, again, we really appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Angel. I appreciate it. But thank you.
You're very welcome. For everyone watching, to learn more about the Real Movement, visit our website, real.njea.org. And until next time, peace.